Hello and welcome back to SiGMA TV. I'm Yanni Collins and I'm joined today by Alidad Tash of 28 Limited, the man that needs no introduction. He is our returning guest. We've done multiple interviews with him with regards to gaming here on Asia. We'll make sure to link those videos down below and make sure to pop those open. So Alidad, welcome back. And first of all, Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year to you too.
Yes, it's really a pleasure to have you again. And we last discussed Macau, and that was way back on our October interview. And now we wanted to know what has happened since. Could you give us an update in regards to, in terms of pandemic, and then second, economic-wise?
As terms of the pandemic, Macau has been relatively doing fantastic. The last time we spoke, Macau had 46 cases of COVID since the pandemic began. 46, not 100, not 46,000, but 46 individual cases. It has now been bumped up to 47 as of this week. And that single case was actually a passenger that was returning back to Macau. So it never actually had any contact. If you want to look at a point of context, it has been more than 9 months since a person with COVID has been walking around Macau. In April 8th was the last time somebody was caught. Since then, the 2 cases have all been caught at the border. Macau has gotten tougher despite, or perhaps due to the restrictions. Macau's been doing so fantastic because when we spoke last in October, Macau's quarantine policy required a quarantine 14 days from anybody entering Macau except from China of 14 days. Macau has bumped that up to 21 days, which is quite draconian, but quite effective. Just imagine being locked up in a hotel room, not a self-quarantine, not a home quarantine, an actual hotel quarantine where you're, locked up for 21 days with no contact with anybody. But that is perhaps one of the reasons that Macau has been quite effective, is ensuring that nobody from the outside comes. Now, Macau did ease up its travel restrictions from people from mainland China back in late September. Allowing them to come in once they've passed the appropriate COVID test. And yet, despite the hundreds of thousands of people who have come here since the last almost 4 months, there has not been a case except that's one passenger returning on a flight, returning back to Macau.
That was indeed very shocking.
So on the pandemic front, things are doing fantastic. On the economic front, as far as, well, basically gaming, the economy of Macau is basically tied to gaming. Macau had a rough second and third quarter when it was very strict and nobody could come in here. And as a result, the revenues were down around 95% down from the same period in 2019. In the fourth quarter, once the borders were opened again to China, its primary, its feeder market, revenues went from being 95% down to roughly 70% down. Sounds like, wow, you're still 70% down from a year before, but it's really 6 times more. 95% down is really 5% of what you did a year ago. Now it's 30% of what you did a year ago. So things looked enthusiastic, things look fantastic, but we've seen a little bit of a steady. The growth has actually stopped since then. It's been kind of steady for a while.
Yes, and I would love to get your perspective. So what are your projections for the year ahead?
Well, I was just saying that Q4 looked great, the fourth quarter, and it looked like quarter one was going to be right on top of it. It's going to be the same kind of growth, going from being 30% of 2019 to maybe perhaps 50% of 2019, but that has not panned out so far. We're shooting this towards the end of January. That has been a challenge. It's kind of been slightly improvements. It's not where it's supposed to be. China has had a few cases flaring up. China's been an amazing, has done an amazing job since March of last year in recovering it and bringing it down to this, single digits, double digits, far lower than the thousands upon thousands, which scared the world roughly this time last year. But there's been a few cases flaring up here and there, and that's why it's dampened some of the enthusiasm for the Chinese New Year, which this year falls on February 12th. As a result, this one holiday where lots of people tend to gamble, there's been there's been less enthusiastic over the last couple of weeks. People are a little bit nervous about traveling from China to anywhere, even within China. And as a result, there's been a bit of a little bit of cold water has been placed on this growth. I foresee the problem the world over has is whether or not twofold. One of them is there enough demand for the vaccine from the people? Are people willing to take up the vaccine? Whether it's Pfizer, whether it's Moderna, whether it's the Russian vaccine, the Cuban vaccine, the Chinese vaccine. And the second one is the availability. Most vaccines today require 2 shots. We're looking at 7.8 billion people in the world. Probably 4 to 5 billion of them want to get shots. That's roughly 8 to 10 billion shots that have to be manufactured. And then there's just not enough time. There's just not enough throughput. And the transportation with the cold chain necessary has not been worked out. So not just Macau, not just China, but everywhere around the world, there will be a delay. Most likely by the end of second quarter, by June of this year, if you want to get a vaccine, most places in the world, you should be able to get a vaccine. That's the first enthusiastic part. The second part is how do you get those people who are not willing to do so to go and take the vaccine? And is it going to be a requirement, not just for getting the visas, because right now what you need is a negative COVID test. That's quite different than getting a vaccine. And whether or not, as rumored, by the second half of this year, everywhere, all airlines will gradually require a vaccine for you, a vaccine passport for you to be able to travel, COVID vaccine to be able to travel. And that's going to have some, challenges. So the enthusiasm for the return of 2021 back closer to the 2019 levels has been dampened. I believe it will be somewhere around 60 to 75% of what it was in 2019. It's not as enthusiastic of people saying, oh yeah, by the end of fourth quarter, we'll be where we were 2019. That is not reasonable because so far China is opened up and that's only 80% of the revenue for Macau in the 2017, 18, 19 years. It's not reasonable for China, having only accounted for 80%, to suddenly go ahead and account for 90 to 100% of the total amount, because Hong Kong looks kind of shaky. The rest of the world looks quite closed. Perhaps third quarter, maybe fourth quarter, Macau will open up, or the world will open up to more and more travel. But this is going to be in us for a long haul. And I don't foresee, it will double what Macau did. I mean, last year was down significantly, second, third quarter, and even the 30% was quite lousy, roughly about 20 to 30% of the previous year. I think going to 60 to 70% of the previous year is fantastic relative to 2020.
Well, that was very illuminating. And looking back, you previously mentioned that casino operators have been suffering as a result of a VIP gambling slowdown. So now, is the VIP still suffering relative to mass gaming?
Yes, VIP is performing far worse because of China's efforts to go ahead and stop money leaving its borders, and also its crackdown on online gaming, as well as gaming to other jurisdictions. So China basically wants to keep the capital within the country to be able to go and resuscitate its economy. It's done quite a good job actually resuscitating it, but it basically says go ahead and don't spend too much money elsewhere, not just your time, but also the money. As a result, it has had a very negative effect. So whereas, for example, the fourth quarter was down 70%, you could almost say between 60 to 64% of it was down on the mass side, but VIP was down 80%. When you blend them all together, you get this combined 70% down. So VIP is definitely suffering more so. And as time goes by, at least in the near future, near to mid future, VIP will continue to suffer. So the recovery will be basically on the heels of mass. That is good news for the casinos, because the profit margin of mass is anywhere between 3 to 4 times VIP. So it's okay for the most profitable segment, mass, to go ahead and do quite a good job. And VIP will not be affecting casino profit bottom lines and profit margins. It's the government of Macau actually that ironically suffers more because it taxes mass revenue and VIP revenue the same amount. So when VIP is doing worse, it has the same effect as mass doing worse, which is not the case when it comes to the operators.
Now, I believe that the 20-year licenses for the 6 gaming companies are set to expire on June of 2022. Any news in front of that?
You know, yeah, we're about a year and a half, less than a year and a half from the licenses expiring and the rebid process and whether or not there's a 7th license, whether somebody will lose it. The election in the US has had a less, I'm not saying Biden is more pro-China, but it's less anti-China than the previous administration. So there's less likelihood of an American, one of the 3 American operators losing their license. But that said, we're only 17 months from the end of the expiration of the licenses. That is just too close. I just don't see how this chief executive is not going to go ahead and exercise this right to perhaps buy himself more time. He can buy another 5 years, up to 5 more years to make a decision. If they're going to go ahead and do some kind of an extent, it's almost like you want to evict somebody. You don't tell them the week before. You give them a few months notice. Or if you want to extend it, you want to give somebody a notice. So it kind of, unless they do it really quickly, within the next few months, few weeks perhaps, I just don't see how they're going to be able to do that, which means good news. There will be an extension of the licenses for up to 5 years, something the chief executive has the power to. And then he can go ahead and take more time and find out a little bit more about the recovery before going and making a decision. But nobody knows what's going to happen. There's a lot of people talking back and forth. My concern is more about the timing as opposed to any rumor or any inside knowledge as to what's really happening regarding the timing.
Interesting. Fantastic. Well, Alidad, I believe that's all the updates we needed from you for Macau. I mean, it's always a pleasure to speak with you on cam and off cam, and there's always
Likewise.
there's always something to learn from you and to get out from you. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to our next monthly session.
Great. Looking forward to it.
And that is it for myself and Alidad. I hope this could be of resource to you as much as it is to us. So let us know how you found this segment. Drop us a comment on the comment box below, and we'll see you on the next video.